Planning for disaster management. How community planning should be done during disaster management. The southern coast of India was hit by giant tsunami waves on 26 December 2004. The poorest and the most undeserved, who were mainly from the fishing community, had to bear the brunt. But the people of Samiyarpettai, a small village in the coastal state of Tamil Nadu, India, were one of those blessed communities who were saved. The villages close to Samiyarpettai had 5 times higher death toll. But how was it possible to save so many lives in Samiyarpettai? Government of Tamil Nadu, with support from United Nations Development Programme, that is UNDP, had initiated the Disaster Risk Management Program. The main objective of the program was to enhance the capacity of the local community by providing them training on first aid, search and rescue, early warnings, etc. The community was also guided by the local administration and NGOs to prepare a village disaster preparedness and response plan. Since the community was self-sufficient, they were able to respond effectively within a short period of time to save the precious lives of their near and dear ones. The short story mentioned above clearly reflects the importance and need for community planning for any hazard that is likely to occur in an area. During and immediately after a disaster, it is most often the neighbors or people of the community who respond first. They are normally the first responders before the affected people can seek any support from the local authorities or any non-governmental organizations, that is NGOs. Further, communities play a vital role in risk reduction, without whose education and involvement a disaster management plan could not be complete. Students and teachers, as educated members of the society, play a crucial role in guiding and facilitating the process of planning in communities to reduce disaster risks. Why shouldn't the community be at the heart of any disaster management initiative? First responder. Since the community is at the site of the disaster, it is the first one to respond to it. Source of maximum information. When a disaster occurs in an area, no one will have better or more comprehensive and up-to-date information on the people living there and its resources than the inhabitants of that area. Local coping mechanism. Most disasters are recurrent, hence there is always a traditionally established coping mechanism that is handed down over the generations. Self-help isn't self-interest. It would be the natural instinct of the community to respond quickly on such occasions, since over-dependence on external resources may be time-consuming and even ineffective. Let us read a story to find out how involvement of the community helps in reducing its vulnerability and being better prepared to face any disaster. The story of a learning community. A 15-year-old boy called Bharat lived in a village called Sukhpar. Bharat's grandfather, Ramji, was a much respected man in Sukhpar and surrounding villages. One day, he told Bharat that the block development officer, BDO, head of an administrative unit at the sub-district level, had invited him for a meeting on what they called disaster management. Out of sheer curiosity, Bharat decided to accompany his grandfather, the Sarpanch and the Talati, secretary of the village panchayat, to the meeting. What happened in the meeting at the office of the block development officer? At the meeting, he found that in addition to the government functionaries, there were young volunteers few years older than him, explaining how their regions were vulnerable to earthquakes, floods, and cyclones. They had maps that showed the movement of earlier cyclones that had hit a neighboring area which was 15 kilometers away from his village. Looking at the vulnerability of the area, the block development officer asked the village sarpanches of each village of his block to prepare a village disaster management plan. Being motivated on seeing the volunteers who were approximately his age, Bharat said to his grandfather that he would like to work as a volunteer and involve his friends and teachers in this process. The block development officer explained to the members present in the meeting the steps to be followed in preparing a plan for their village. After attending the meeting, Bharat and his grandfather were very eager to take up this initiative as they did feel that their village was affected by frequent floods and cyclones which resulted in a huge loss to life, property and livelihood. And it took a long time for the villagers of Sakpar to bring back life to normalcy. To help his grandfather organize the village meeting, Bharat first discussed the importance of having a plan for their community with his schoolmates and decided to take the responsibility of informing each and every household of the village to be present at the meeting. Ramji was very happy to see his grandson take so much interest and work. How did the school support in this initiative? Ramji and the Sarpanch of the village took the responsibility of organizing the meeting in the primary school located in their village. The principal of the school and the teachers took the initiative to help Ramji and the Sarpanches in organizing the meeting. They announced in the classes that the parents of all the students should be present in the meeting to discuss about the disaster management plan. The village priest Pandit Ramdas and the Maulana of the mosque Abdul Razak too motivated the villagers to participate in the meeting as it was very important to look into their own safety. Other key persons like the doctor at the primary health center, PHC, the Anganwadi worker of the village, the leader of the Women's Self-Help Group, SHG, the postmaster, and others were also informed about the meeting. The villagers of Sukhpar met in the primary school in the evening when the men were back from work and the women of the households were also relatively free. As this initiative was the first of its kind in that area, the Block Development Officer, BDO, also participated in the village meeting to guide the villagers for preparing the village disaster preparedness and response plan. On the day of the village meeting, Ramji, being an old man in his late 70s, shared with the villagers the impact of various disasters that had affected the villagers and how he had seen his community members suffering because of those frequent disasters. Listening to him, the villagers realized that there were ways and means to reduce the impact of these disasters. Shamu, a young teenage boy, got up and shared his experience of how he and his friends had guarded the river embankment the whole night during the previous year's flood by using sandbags so as to protect the embankment from breaching. In the meeting, the Block Development Officer, BDO, asked the villagers to form the Village Disaster Management Committee, VDMC. This committee would guide and support the community members in formulating the village disaster management plan. The Sarpanch of the village stood up and said, "Sir, I would like to be the chairperson of the committee." As soon as they volunteered, other members of the villages, like the school principal, the doctor, the SHG group leader, and few senior respected members of the villagers, like Ramji, too agreed to be a part of this committee. The BDO was taken back on seeing the enthusiasm of the villagers to have a safe village.